Without any further delay, I would like to invite our guest speaker for today's event, Honorable Sir Abdur Rauf Khatana, to proceed the seminar. Please, sir.
बहुत शुक्रिया, thank you very much. As you were giving a brief introduction of myself, I was thinking perhaps you are serious. So first of all, thank you everyone for sparing your time. I usually keep on scratching your ears during my lectures, but it's indeed your, I would say, compassion or love that you have still not exhausted with my lectures. You still believe that you should come to listen me and pay attention to my separate independent lecture as well. So it's really encouraging sign, inspiration, and I would thank you for your love. And the organizers of this event, I think the Law Council students,
yes, last one.
Law Council student, the chairman, there were the president and the moderators. Please accept my heartiest thanks and congratulations. This is indeed a good step, not only as you have provided me an opportunity to speak up with you people again, but it's a good sign if it continues. So it will provide an opportunity to many people to come and talk and receive from you as well as we impart at times, but at the same time we receive from you as well. So during the seminar, as it is titled on the fake news, which is a very catching word and also attractive word, fake news and right to information, and then the role of law. Mostly I believe the students here are from the law department. So the fake news, the role of international law, as well as the right to information regime in Pakistan is apparently a very hotly debated area in Pakistan. And those who are connected with social media, with print media and electronic media, so you keep on listening and thinking about these terms. So I will start with the just information kind of explanation of these terms, and then we will come on what is the fake news exactly, what is the right to information in Pakistan, and then what is the international framework, and what the role law should play in this regard. So मेरे ख्याल में मुझे स्टार्ट करना चाहिए एक सेइंग से जो अभी रिसेंटली एक बुक मेरी नज़र से गुजरी, अरुंधति रॉय, शायद आपने उनका नाम सुना होगा. इज़ अ वेरी famous Indian writer. Now is not living in India because she is banned to come into India. तो उनकी किताब है आज़ादी. It is in English but the title is in Urdu. तो उसमें एक सेंटेंस है, उससे स्टार्ट करते हैं. She says, only fiction serves the purpose when truth cannot be told. Only fiction serves the purpose when truth cannot be told. So this makes me more sensitive about the topic, about the things which are going on around us, particularly in Pakistan. So at the time, people, when they are constrained, they feel pressures, fear, and kind of very bad consequences. So feeling these kind of consequences, at times it becomes very difficult for them to speak up or to hold the truth and to share it, to impart the truth. So in these kind of circumstances, obviously, only those writers are blessed which are famous for their fiction writing. You know, in fiction, your law perhaps cannot get hold on them, because in fiction it's not a kind of thing upon which the truth can be established, or it is not considered as a piece of evidence. Sometimes, you know, it's a fiction. That fiction is famous for being fiction. That ये तो मतलब एक दरोग गोई जिसे आप कह सकते हैं, कोई कहानी है, story है. So storytellers are perhaps most blessed people in this era when they are when whatever they write, that is the fiction, and perhaps it is not reported as a thing which is culpable by law, and it perhaps it does not violate the right to information regime, the regulatory framework within we exercise our freedom of expression and things like that. So in this particular era, it becomes more important that how people would speak up truth, how they will get to know something, and how their opinions are formed, and particularly, in the freedom of expression regime, it's important that not only do you have the freedom to express yourself, but it is also important that you have the freedom to access certain information. It's also important that you are allowed to impart information. At the moment I am going to say something and which you are listening to understand something as a piece of information. So it is a kind of impartment of knowledge that I am trying to impart what I believe with regards to things like that. So in this particular era, keeping these things in our mind, if we start up thinking about the fake news and then the role of law and international law and also the RTI regime in Pakistan. So first of all, fake news is something which provides a kind of way to the regulators that through this, when they come up with this very proposition that these fake news are, if there is a free news, or if there is a freedom of expression, if the people are absolutely free to say whatever they want to say, if they keep on sharing, if they keep on telling things, if they keep on reporting things, keep on documenting things with the absolute freedom. So this provides a kind of opportunity for the fake news as well. So people at times would be deceived by the fake news, and then if the fake news continues and it is getting frequently published, so it will obviously change the minds of the people, it will change the opinion of the people, and that perhaps will result something not acceptable. So this fake news, if it continues, then it provides an opportunity the regulator, the law enforcement agency, and the legislature itself and the government itself, that certainly this is something which is bad. Everyone would say that this is bad. So apparently if the fake news is frequently going on, then it will obviously provide an opportunity to the government to come up with a kind of mechanism, with a kind of control, with a kind of legislation which not only will reduce the scope of fake news, but it will also limit the freedom of expression as well. So now we will discuss, there are theories of the freedom of expression, that what is freedom of expression, and whether the fake news or this free speech has certain limits, or what is the exact standard of the freedom of expression. So long as this standard is not defeated or it is not violated, then obviously the freedom shall be recognized as legitimate to be exercised. So we will talk about the exact standard of the freedom of information, and then we will also see that what is the fake news and what is its impact on sometimes in the political field, in the ongoing politics and in international relations, and some other areas of its effect we will also take into account. So for fake news, obviously it's something which is not truth, something which is not accurate. It is something which is not based on truth. So sometimes a kind of information, sometimes a kind of knowledge, a kind of report, you just know it personally that it is not true, but you start on publishing it, sharing it, and it goes on, and perhaps at some people, when it reaches, they hardly recognize, or they hardly assess that this is rather a fake news or it is a correct news. So the person who is deliberately creating it, he knows it that this is not based on truth. But once it goes on, then at times when it reaches to the masses, so it creates an impact, and it is very difficult to ascertain its truthfulness, whether it is really based on truth or not. So once it has been spread, it will finally it would be very difficult to be ascertained as whether it is truth or not. So once it becomes difficult, then obviously it serves its purpose. It serves its ill design. Sometimes it has ill designs and ill objectives, just to get some kind of interest, some kind of political interest, just to damage the repute of some other person. So these are those areas wherein this fake news is going on. It will affect, and it will keep on affecting. So this is certainly a valid ground for the government that this is something bad and it should be controlled, right? On this very avenue, the government comes into action. Most of the governments, they have defined their RTI regime, they have defined their regulators, their regulatory authorities. So they will keep on checking on these things whether these are fake news or not, and if fake news is going on, then it should be penalized, it should be controlled, and the culprits must be put into the bars, and they must be accountable and answerable that why they have done so. So this is the area from where the government comes into action. Now, after the fake news, there is another thing which needs to be understood and explained, which has very much relevance in this, and this is the other perspective. So the fake news, as I said, that this is an avenue which is generally used by the governments to restrict the freedom of expression regime and scope, and on the other hand, it has some other kind of implications as well. So fake news has the next kind of implication, or next kind of its mashallah yaar attend kar le. So okay, so the fake news in its next sphere becomes it has some other kind of influences as well. So have you heard about, or you might have listened to the word post-truth? Post-truth. So this results into something which is known as post-truth. So post-truth is something that you just change the objectivity of the truth. For example, this is a Nestle's. Generally, we call it Nestle's, but I think it's different.
Very
yes.
sparklet.
Yeah. So this brand, this particular bottle of water, it is objectively a bottle containing water, and that has been produced by some particular industry or company, right? So this is objective, clearly, यानी कि जो बिल्कुल solidly जो आपको पता ही एक चीज़ है. But there are things which may be subjective with regards to it. So just changing the objectivity into subjectivity, that is, in my opinion, perhaps the post-truth, that the people will not accept its real objective truth or its substantial truth. Rather, they will start liking the other ideas and other views about it. Perhaps there would be many reasons that why people would do it, but on the basis of the analysis of the human being's behavior, there have been found certain results that why people would not accept its objective truth, rather they will go for its subjectivity, that the way it has been elaborated, or it has been interpreted, or it has been defined, or it has been explained by other people. For example, instead of saying it water, someone can say that this is it has been produced by Nestle, for instance, and this Nestle company is from Israel, or it is from Jews, and they have included in it some sort of chemicals which will certainly make you infertile, right? So I don't know, but most of the things are directed into that very direction in Pakistan. In polio आ रहा है, इसमें infertility है, ठीक है. कोविड की वैक्सीन आ रही है, ये जिसने लगाई है उसके साथ भी यही होगा, right?
बर्दाना कमजोर.
हाँ. So ये perhaps अब आप इससे अंदाज़ा लगा लें कि ये why these so special, peculiar, sentimental, psychological elements are included while disseminating the subjective information about it. Why? And why only this infertility issue is always tagged in things, whatever comes into Pakistan, so this is tagged in it, and there is one segment of the people, one segment of the society which very easily, comfortably says that those who will use it, they will be at the end of the day, they will become infertile. They won't be able to reproduce, right? So why in case of Pakistan? Perhaps we are so conscious about that thing, right? So this is the psychological element when it is added into certain information, into certain objective truth, that results into a kind of phenomenon, into a kind of concept or kind of belief that people would very conveniently adopt. people won't go into authenticate it, whether this information is based on truth or not, because they are, perhaps because of their own thinking, belief, psychology or inner self, they are really conscious about it, they will certainly accept it. यानी कि आप इंफॉर्मेशन को ऐसे बना के भेजते हैं या उसको इस तरह तख्लीक करते हैं कि वो सच को एक्सेप्ट ही नहीं करेंगे, वो इसी को एक्सेप्ट करेंगे. And this is why, because the people have a kind of their own affiliation, a preconceived notion in their mind, and sometimes their own, I would say, weaknesses or kind of psychiatric issues, right? So this is the impact of the fake news when it is tagged with the post-truth phenomenon. So the post-truth phenomenon, certainly that is designed and that is used for typical purposes, for certain self-serving purposes. So when this fake news is drafted or crafted in a particular manner in order that it shall be certainly received by the segments in that particular way, and after they have received it in that particular sense, they will certainly make their opinion, and once their opinion is made, then they will express their opinion, and their expression of opinion will drastically change the political scene of a particular society. Sometimes political scene, sometimes you can say their security situation, sometimes their international relations, their relations with other states. So that's why this has become a very, very sensitive thing and very, very, I would say, thing which needs to be controlled by law. So that is also a kind of justification. And this post-truth, which I have just tried to explain in my words, perhaps you have understood. I'm not sure whether you have fully understood it or not, but if it has its beginning in 2016, it's relatively a new idea, though people say that in the philosophy it has been for the first time talked about by the Nietzsche, that he has also talked about that people have certain values and they would accept a kind of knowledge, a kind of belief which serves their values. So you can accordingly transform your knowledge, you can accordingly, I would say, change and redesign your concepts which would be acceptable to the people. So for example, the word republic or the word democracy. So it has so many connotations. People will understand it differently. So you can put a sort of meaning into a word which is desired or which is accepted by the people. So Nietzsche has its kind of mention in his philosophy, but relatively in 2016 this word has been used, and perhaps in the Oxford Dictionary you will see that 2016 has been mentioned as the year of post-truth word, that this year has in fact created or added a word into English language as post-truth. And this was certainly in relation with United States election, and you know that what result it had, and people had obviously raised voices on it. So this phenomenon, once is attached, then it becomes also more sensitive. That if mere fake news maybe just for fun you can do it, that will not affect too much. But when it is designed to change the whole destiny of the nations and to change the whole scenario of the international relations, then perhaps it will affect, its effects are more drastic and more wide. So that's why it also becomes the subject of international law as well, to look into and have a kind of regulation and to regulate it, to provide a kind of scope for its control, for its regulation, so that it may not be misused. So now having just spread this kind of, I would say, a track that where you have now started thinking that whether fake news, what it is and whether it is good or bad, and similarly what is post-truth and whether it is good or bad. So having done so, I would now come on the regulatory framework, that now what is right RTI and whether it has a kind of relation with the fake news and post-truth, and then what is the RTI regime. So RTI generally we talk about is the right to information. So right to information is, a part and parcel of the freedom of expression. So freedom of expression is basically a substantial right, a fundamental human right, but it has a kind of integral part of the freedom of expression, has an integral part as right to information. So right to information is always clubbed with freedom of expression. And if you see Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it has expressly provided that everyone shall have the freedom of expression, and then explained that this information includes this freedom includes everyone has the freedom of expression, and then this freedom includes right to information. So in the same article where the freedom of expression has been provided, it has been explained in the very fundamental document of human rights, which is known as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It provides that the freedom of expression includes right to information, and then for information it is a tripartite kind of mechanism that to receive information, to access information, to receive information, to impart information, disseminate information. So all these things are related with the information. So first you need to have information, access information. You must have the right to access information. If you access the information, then you have the right to have the information. So it is also a debate, for example, in our law, and I will talk about in a while. So there is a mechanism that you can access information. So just to access or to have information. So not only to access but to have information. You have information, and then you have the right to impart information. That you, whatever you have just accessed or you have the information you have attained, you have the right to disseminate. You can share it on your whatever means you have. और कुछ नहीं तो फेसबुक आपको पता है आपके पास होता है, और फेसबुक में जब भी कोई पिक्चर लें आप अपने स्टेटस में जब आता है ना, व्हाट इज़ ऑन योर माइंड, हाँ शेयर खान, सो व्हाट इज़ ऑन योर माइंड, सो उसमें आपके पास जो ही आप उसमें कुछ एक डॉट भी लगाते हैं तो फिर वो आपको 2-3 ऑप्शंस भी नीचे देता है. व्हाट आर दोज ऑप्शंस? कि योर कैमरा, हाँ, समटाइम्स जो आपकी पिक्चर्स हैं, समटाइम्स आपकी लोकेशन है, हाँ, चेक्ड इन सेरीना, समटाइम्स चेक्ड इन कराची एयरपोर्ट, हाँ, शेर खान बैठा हुआ यहाँ पे होता है लेकिन लिख देता है मैं चेक्ड इन कराची एयरपोर्ट, हाँ, ये न्यूयॉर्क एयरपोर्ट समटाइम्स. सो अब ये जो है ये दिस इज़ अ वेरी वेरी सेंसिटिव मीडिया, एंड बिकॉज ऑफ दिस मीडिया द होल डिबेट हैज़ बिकम वेरी मच वाइब्रेंट, दैट हर इशू जो है वो इसके साथ मुंसलिक हो गया. सो जस्ट बिकॉज ऑफ social media is, you know, user friendly. Every individual, even a layman who does not know what is right to information, who does not know what is law, who does not know what is other things, but since he has this device, and this device is a kind of media, a private media, you know, so if maybe it is on the Facebook live, I don't know, but if it is on the Facebook live, so this is a media, it is going on, so everyone can access it. And if you if the weather is good in Islamabad, you just start capturing it in a video and making it Facebook live, so it is also going everywhere, right? So in the Facebook you always have an option, feed, news feed. Have you accessed this? News feed.
Yes.
Right. So once you have something, you write it, or you just upload a picture, and then it asks you where to share it. It may be shared as a story. It can be shared as a simple Facebook post, and it can also be shared as a news feed. आप समझ चुके मैं आपको Facebook से मना करता हूँ तो मुझे इसका पता नहीं है, लेकिन मुझे भी कुछ चीज़ें पता है Facebook, right? So now this news item is available with you. So you are a little bit a sort of tiny news agency, right? आप जब उसके साथ शेयर कर देते हैं तो उसका इम्पैक्ट वही है जो उसका. बल्कि अभी जो इस वक्त के जो इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मीडिया है, देयर आर सो मेनी फ्रेंड्स इन इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मीडिया एंड प्रिंट मीडिया, दे यूजुअली टेल मी दैट दिस इलेक्ट्रॉनिक एंड प्रिंट मीडिया इज नाउ बिहाइंड द सोशल मीडिया. सो सोशल मीडिया स्प्रेड्स द न्यूज़ वेरी क्विकली, एंड इन फैक्ट द प्रिंट एंड इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मीडिया फॉलोज इट. जो न्यूज़ पहले फेसबुक पे चल पड़ती है, सोशल मीडिया में आ जाती है, फिर उसको जियो न्यूज़ और ये बाकी लोग जो है उसको बाद में उनके ज़रिए उन तक ये बात पहुंचती है. सो यू कैन से दैट दिस बिकॉज ऑफ दिस डिवाइस, द योर सेल फोन and other devices like tablet and other things which you generally use, you perhaps know more than me, all the devices. So these devices have now provided an access to ordinary individual to use it. And people know it that once this information is shared on the Facebook, it will go viral. Why? Because everybody has this media in his hand and he will keep on sharing. कुछ लगे उनका और कोई काम नहीं होता, जो भी चीज़ आती है उसको शेयर कर देते हैं, मैसेज आता है उसको फॉरवर्ड कर देते हैं. ठीक है, इतने ज़्यादा मैसेजेस आपके फॉरवर्ड मैसेजेस आपको मिलते हैं व्हाट्सएप पे अदरवाइज. तो इससे आप अंदाज़ा लगा सकते हैं कि everyone has become a tool, understandingly or consciously or subconsciously, knowingly or unknowingly, right? So this is how this whole regime, this whole mechanism has become very, very sensitive. And perhaps, just like मैंने कहा ना कि this social media is so fast that even electronic and print media, they are running behind it. They are chasing the steps of social media. Similarly, law is chasing the steps of this particular regime, that how this is going to be changed and how this is going to be developed. So in no time, people are getting more and more ideas and more things and more applications. So it is in fact a difficult task for the law as well, because what is the foremost duty of law? सबसे पहले तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल ड्यूटी है, चाय पीनी चाहिए और इसमें शुगर भी ज़बरदस्त है. Yes, so what is the constitutional duty, foremost duty of the law? Yes, if a problem has occurred, if something is problematic in the society, so law has to regulate it. Law has to take it into its own control. So it is said in the beautiful words, not my words, but someone like me has said, that law has to reflect the change on the ground. Law has to reflect on the change which occurs on the ground. So law is, that's why, a continuously evolving science. It evolves. It keeps on evolving, right? And you know that if the legislation, if the Parliament or National Assembly, which is perhaps supposed to make laws in Pakistan, if they are not making laws, or if some laws are not being amended or repealed, then there are other institutions which do play their role. What are those? Judiciary, right? So if the law is silent, or in area where something has happened and if it has been reported into the courts and judges are now considering it, and if they find there is no statutory provision which can be applied over here, and on the basis of that we could find a solution, or we could dispense the justice, then they have the inherent powers. Their jurisdiction is they have their inherent jurisdiction, and they can use the principles of interpretation. So through this, they sometimes develop the principle of law. So already maybe a statutory provision is there, a rule is there, a principle is there. So they will develop it, they will interpret it, and they will add into it, right? So that addition will perhaps address the situation. So this particular addition is known as precedent, and it is also one source of the law. So just like legislation, precedent is also one source of law. So certainly in legislation, you know, it would be difficult at times to come to assembly and have talk on and debate and then finally pass on the law. Maybe sometimes it is very easy. पाकिस्तान में तो 33 लॉज एक दफ़ा भी बने हैं, तो मे बी मैं अपनी बातों में सच्चा ना हूँ, लेकिन जनरली क्योंकि आप उसकी जो स्पिरिट है लॉ का, आपको पता है कि जब ये डिबेट होती है उस पर फॉर एंड अगेंस्ट आर्गूमेंट्स होते हैं, एंड ओनली देन द वोट इज़ कंडक्टेड, और फिर उसके बाद डिसाइड किया जाता है कि ये लॉ बनना चाहिए या नहीं बनना चाहिए. लॉ की फिलासफी यही है कि इट शुड बी deliberately discussed, it should reflect the will of the people, right? So after that, the law, if in true sense, if the law is made, it will take a lot of time. So if the parliament is not so fast to make a law very quickly, then it is the possibility of it is the discretion of the courts that they can add into the previous laws and they can serve the urgent purpose. So this is also how law keeps on evolving. So as I was saying, that it is difficult for the regime, for the legislature to take on this particular issue, that what rules should be identified, what kind of legislation should be made, wherein we could address these issues, because they have drastic effects not only on the personal liberties and right to repute of the individuals, but also on the nations and the states, and perhaps in the international arena. So then the regime which, number one, it may be restricted. The scope of the freedom of expression may be restricted. That freedom of expression does not mean that if you are free to speak, so you start abusing others, right? So you may not defame others. So this would be obviously bad. So if the freedom of expression is there, then it should have kind of responsibilities as well. So the same article mentions that it has very special, sensitive responsibilities as well. Once you want to exercise the freedom of expression, you must be conscious that it may not be misused. It may not result in religious hatred, it may not result in national hatred, and it may not incite the feelings and the emotions of other people, right? So for this, in Article 19, there are two conditions. One, it should be the limitations, whatever you consider necessary. So necessary has come the first, otherwise necessary is the second condition. So initial first condition is that it must be, limitations must be introduced by law wherever they are necessary. So two conditions. So legal restriction, and then if they are considered necessary. So only these two limitations have been provided in the covenant, and later on we see there is Article 20, which has further provided certain limitations on the freedom of expression. So in Article 19, freedom of expression has been defined. In Article 20, they have talked about the hate speech. What is hate speech? Yes. So
beyond the limits.
Yes, if the freedom of expression is your right, then hate speech is an offense. Hate speech is an offense. So hate speech has been prohibited by the very next article. In the Article 19, freedom of expression has been provided that you are free to express. But in the very next article, it has been said that you may not be guilty of what? Hate speech. So hate speech has been defined as what kind of expression which results in religious hatred, which results in a kind of racial hatred or racial discrimination, and there's another thing, a kind of propaganda of war, right, which can affect your relations with other states. So this is also provided to be prohibited. So the mechanism has been defined that it shall also be prohibited. क्यों भाई टाइम खत्म तो नहीं होगा?
Actually, sir, we have a class 2 बजे यहाँ पे पीछे
Okay.
class है.
Okay. So just 5 minutes. आपको पता है मेरे 5 मिनट मैं खत्म कर सकता हूँ.
पाकिस्तानी 5 minutes.
जो बात मैंने 20 घंटों में कहनी है वो मैं 2 मिनट में कह सकता हूँ, राइट? बट जितना मैं बता सकता हूँ वो मैं आपको बता देता हूँ, जो रह गया फिर रह गया. So there is a freedom of expression, then there is a hate speech which is absolutely condemned and prohibited. Moreover, the very important thing, very sensitive thing, you must bear in your mind, always being a student of law, that the international human rights law obviously has provided freedom of expression, but it has prohibited hate speech. This is not something which has been defined by other states. In the same convention which says you are free to express, the very same convention in the very next article says you are not allowed to say which results into hate speech. So hate speech is to be prohibited by law. So this is also an obligation on the states which do commit to comply with the human rights treaties, that they shall prohibit hate speech. So how the hate speech can be prohibited? By penalizing it. By penalizing it. So now there are two theories. One theory says that we should not define any punishment on hate speech. There is one theory. The other theory says that if you do not prohibit the hate speech, then you cannot protect the free speech as well. So if you want to promote the free speech, you need to prohibit the hate speech, right? So देखें एक चीज़ है, जब वो अच्छे तरीके से हो रही होगी तो उस पर किसी को एतराज़ नहीं होगा, लेकिन जब उसमें कोई ऐसा पहलू सामने आएगा जो दूसरों के लिए तकलीफ का बायस बनेगा, तो फिर उस फ्रीडम को एक्सरसाइज तो नहीं करने दिया जाएगा, right? So this hate speech is perhaps a protection mechanism for the free speech. कि इसके ऊपर कोई बात नहीं आएगी, फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच पे तब तक बात नहीं आएगी जब तक आप हेट स्पीच नहीं करेंगे. सो ये तो कन्वेंशन के ड्राफ्टर्स ने, कोवेनेंट के ड्राफ्टर्स ने, तो उनके माइंड में थी ये बात कि फ्रीडम ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन को हमने अगर इंटैक्ट रखना है तो हमें हेट स्पीच को क्या करना होगा? प्रोहिबिट करना होगा, मना करना होगा, पिनलाइज करना होगा. सो शैल बी प्रोहिबिटेड बाय लॉ, दीज वर्ड्स आर इंक्लूडेड इन द covenant. So most of the times people do forget these words and they just say that whatever kind of restriction has been imposed on freedom of expression, that is perhaps denial of the freedom of expression. So people would easily say that perhaps this state is not believing in the freedom of expression. So this is not the case. This is the theory that if you want to exercise the freedom of expression, if you want to enjoy the freedom of expression, then you must prohibit the hate speech, right? So if hate speech is prohibited, you will keep on enjoying the free speech. But there is other theory as well, those who believe that hate speech is nothing, no such thing exists as hate speech. So whatever you want to say, you should be free to say, whether it results into the disrepute of others are not. On the other hand, we have laws. So this is the balance, where the balance has been striken. We must keep this in mind, that freedom of expression, if it results into something bad, that must be prohibited. So this is the exact balance which has been identified by the United Nations and the United Nations General Assembly and the state parties of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Now I would briefly talk about the regime which is going on in Pakistan. So certainly all people know that we have ratified this covenant in 2010. 2010 में हम इस covenant को हमने ratify किया. We became a state party to this covenant, and a state party is under an obligation to comply with all the requirements, right? So prior to 2010, since the inception of 18th Amendment in our Constitution, this was no more a fundamental right in our Constitution, right? So freedom, right to information was no more a fundamental right in our Constitution. So in the shape of Article 19, capital A, Article 19A, this right was inserted in the Constitution through the 18th Amendment. However, prior to the 18th Amendment, it was perhaps 2002 or 2003, when we had Right to Information Ordinance. Right to Information Ordinance, RIO. Rio बिस्किट खाया कभी आपने? हाँ? नहीं खाया? So Right to Information Ordinance, आपको पता है ये martial law regime में introduce किया गया था. So people were very happy that at least this martial law regime has provided this mechanism. But that was in fact, instead of giving liberties, it was restricting more, imposing more restrictions on the freedom of information. But this was certainly considered as an defective law, and later on in 2017, we made a kind of law through the proper channel in the parliament, the Right to Information Act of Pakistan, 2017. So 2017 में जो हमने ये एक्ट बनाया है, उसके बाद ये एक रेगुलेटरी फ्रेमवर्क है राइट टू इन्फॉर्मेशन के हवाले से. उससे पहले कुछ सूबों में भी लेजिस्लेशन हुई है. पंजाब में सबसे पहले सिंध में हुई, उसके बाद मेरे ख्याल में खैबर बलूचिस्तान में हुई, खैबर पख्तूनख्वा और पंजाब में 2013 तक नहीं हुई, 2013 में हुई. लेकिन पर इसमें जो है वो एक फर्दर एक डेवलपमेंट हो रही है. अब इस स्टेज में पार्टिकुलरली जो रजीम थी, उसमें एक बैलेंस था जो 2019 के एक्ट में था. अब उसको भी दोबारा से छेड़छाड़ की जा रही है, उसको रिपील करने की कोशिश की जा रही है या अमेंड करने की कोशिश की जा रही है. हालांकि उसमें भी बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं. अब टाइम बहुत कम रह गया है, लेकिन आई वुड से कि उसका आर्टिकल 16 आप ज़रूर पढ़ें, नोट करें अपने पास. आर्टिकल 16 जो हमारा फ्रीडम ऑफ राइट टू इन्फॉर्मेशन एक्ट है 2017 का, उसका आर्टिकल 16 which is providing certain kind of protections or kind of exemptions to a particular information which cannot be shared, right? So freedom of right to information है ना, तो right to information में बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं जिनसे आपको right दिया गया है कि आप information उनके वाले से हासिल कर सकते हैं. But there are things which are exempted from, so you need to go through and you will find out the longest article, not only in the act but also in many acts. You will see that this is Article 16. This section is the longest section, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K तक किए जाता है इसकी provisions, कि जिसमें आप ये भी हासिल नहीं कर सकते, ये भी हासिल नहीं कर सकते, ये भी हासिल नहीं कर सकते. इन स्पाइट ऑफ दैट उसके बाद भी फर्दर रिस्ट्रिक्शंस की बात की जा रही है और फर्दर रेगुलेटरी मैकेनिज्म की बात की जा रही है और एक रेगुलेटरी अथॉरिटी मजीद उसको बात की जा रही है कि वो भी एक आने वाली है. तो अब दिस इज़ गोइंग ऑन विद रिगार्ड्स टू द राइट टू इन्फॉर्मेशन इन पाकिस्तान. And we, those who believe in human rights and those who believe in the human dignity, so perhaps this is a very good instance that you can use that if the fake news is going on and we are not controlling it, it will affect very badly, not only the individuals but the state and society as well. And they come up with the ready-made example of the US election, that look what happened in the US. So the well-advanced, well-educated people, if they were deceived and they were affected by this kind of freedom, then what to say of Pakistan? So we need to have a sound protective mechanism. So this is certainly a very good avenue and instance and kind of excuse for them. So they can come up with more regulations. But on the other hand, if this in the era of this post-truth, if we still keep on stricting and screwing the media persons and the news and the talk shows and things like that, so it will affect certainly the right to information. So for example, if the media is very strictly controlled, there are many things I can talk about. That there are many models that how media can be checked and how media can be reformed. So in many states the media has its self-assessment kind of mechanism, wherein it is independent authority and people from media themselves keep on checking it and looking at it, whether if something is bad they can reduce it, they can control it. And there are states which have provided a loosely controlled kind of mechanism, wherein the certain things which are certainly obviously against the state, against the integrity of the state, national interest, public interest, so those things certainly shall be censored and prohibited. But just using this avenue of fake news to fully deny the right to information. Freedom of expression, is something else, but right to information, if it is affected, then you are unable to have information. If you don't have the information, you cannot make an opinion. If you cannot make an opinion, obviously you cannot express it, right? So freedom of expression is in fact based on right to information. So this is all I think I have to say. If you have 2-3 questions, quickly I can respond to those.
Sir, what are the remedies available to us against the fake news? और दूसरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि do we have right against right to information against judiciary?
Yes. So first of all, right to information में judiciary के हवाले से तो है, आप जो है ना, जो whatever decision has been made, it has become a public document. जो मैंने आपको एक्ट बताया है उसमें पूरा मैकेनिज्म है कि आप किसी भी पब्लिक बॉडी, किसी भी पब्लिक ऑफिसर से जाके आप एप्लीकेशन दे के आप इंफॉर्मेशन ले सकते हैं, ठीक है. अगर वो इंफॉर्मेशन देने से डिनाई करता है और वो डिनाई करने का अहल नहीं है कानून के तहत, तो फिर आपके पास राइट टू अपील है. अपील किसको करते हैं? नहीं, इसमें स्पेशल अपील का जो मैकेनिज्म है वो क्रिएट किया गया है पाकिस्तान इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशन के पास, PIC, पाकिस्तान इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशन. सो कमीशन के पास डायरेक्ट अपील जाती है और उसने फिर एक लिमिटेड टाइम में अपना उसने एक डिसीजन देना होता है. सो अभी मीडिया के इसके ऊपर एक रिपोर्ट भी अभी रिसेंटली पाकिस्तान के जो इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशन है उन्होंने पब्लिश की है. उन्होंने बताया कि 700-800 के करीब उनको अपील्स आई थी, जिसमें उन्होंने इतनी जो है वो फिनांस आई, इतनी डिफेंस के खिलाफ आई, इतनी इंफॉर्मेशन मिनिस्ट्री के खिलाफ आई, जुडिशरी के खिलाफ भी उनके पास अपील्स आई हैं कि हमें ये इंफॉर्मेशन नहीं मिल रही, राइट. तो उसमें वो मैकेनिज्म प्रोवाइडेड है कंप्लेंट, और कंप्लेंट के बाद फिर आप जाते हैं अपील के लिए. सो अपील कमीशन के पास जाती है और एप्लीकेशन आप रेलेवेंट पब्लिक बॉडी के पास जाते हैं जिससे आप इंफॉर्मेशन चाहिए, और वो नहीं करते तो फिर उसके बाद आपके पास कंप्लेंट का मैकेनिज्म है और कंप्लेंट के बाद अपील के लिए आप जा सकते हैं. तो ये जुडिशरी उसमें एग्जेम्प्टेड नहीं है, आपको इन्फॉर्मेशन मिल सकती है. दूसरा क्या था?
What are the remedies available to us?
हाँ, रेमेडीज़ में अगर किसी इंडिविजुअल को फेक न्यूज़ से नुकसान होता है तो वो तो आपको पता है डिफेमेशन का लॉ है पाकिस्तान में. सो पर्सनल आपकी जो इंजरीज होती हैं, लीगल इंजरी जिसको आप कहते हैं, सो पर्सनल इंजरी के लिए वी हैव अ डिफेमेशन लॉ जिसके तहत आप हद जाने का मुकदमा आप कर सकते हैं, ठीक है.
रेट पिटीशन सर वो भी है?
रेट में तो डेफिनेटली उस वक्त जाते हैं ना जब आपका कोई सब्सटेंशियल जो आपकी सबऑर्डिनेट लेजिस्लेशन में लॉ नहीं है या कोई फॉर्म नहीं है. सो जब आपके पास उसके लिए PPC का सेक्शन मौजूद है तो आप उसके खिलाफ क्रिमिनल प्रोसीडिंग्स का आगाज़ कर सकते हैं, और क्रिमिनल प्रोसीडिंग आगाज़ करने के लिए आप थाने से स्टार्ट करते हैं, राइट, जहाँ पे आप एप्लीकेशन देते हैं. उसके बाद इस्तगासा तैयार होता है और फिर क्रिमिनल कोर्ट में मुकदमा चलता है. अगर इससे सेटिस्फेक्शन नहीं मिलती आपको तो फिर आपके पास जो है वो पटिशन का राइट है, जहाँ पे आप समझे कि एक सरकारी मुलाजम या एक सरकारी अहदेदार जो काम करने का पाबंद था उसने नहीं किया, तो फिर आप उनके खिलाफ जाते हैं रेट पटिशन.
राइट टू इंफॉर्मेशन है बेसिकली वो कब ये डेरोगेटेबल राइट्स है, नॉन डेरोगेटेबल, क्योंकि आई हैव फ्रॉम बलूचिस्तान तो हमारे पास मोर देन बहुत सारे एरियाज हैं जहाँ पे नेट अवेलेबल है, ये नेट को सस्पेंड किया गया है, तो राइट टू इंफॉर्मेशन डैमेज हुआ है.
सो फ्रीडम ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन परहैप्स इज नॉट अ नॉन डेरोगेबल राइट. ये नॉन डेरोगेबल नहीं है, डेरोगेबल राइट, ठीक है. अगर वो देख लें आप आर्टिकल 4 ऑफ द इंटरनेशनल कॉवेनेंट ऑन सिविल एंड पॉलिटिकल राइट्स, तो उसमें फ्रीडम ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन को जो है वो कंट्रोल किया गया, लेकिन उसके लिए 4 कंडीशंस हैं. वो 4 कंडीशंस अगर नहीं फुलफिल कर रहे तो फिर आप कंट्रोल नहीं कर सकते, फिर आप इसको सस्पेंड नहीं कर सकते इस राइट. वो कंडीशंस आपको पता है. पहला ये कि आपके यहाँ पब्लिक इमरजेंसी है, ऑफिशियली प्रोक्लेम्ड. फिर आपने सेक्रेटरी जनरल को इन राइटिंग लिख दिया है कि हमारे यहाँ इमरजेंसी है इस टाइम से इस टाइम तक, वजह भी बता दी है, ठीक है. और उसके बाद फिर आप जो ही वो इमरजेंसी ख़त्म होती है तो फिर आप दोबारा उसको इन्फोर्स करते हैं. सो ये इसका हरगिज़ ये मतलब नहीं होगा कि अगर एक राइट जो है वो ना डेरोगेबल है तो आप बगैर किसी वजह के भी उसको डेरोगेट कर सकते हैं. सो नॉन डेरोगेबल राइट्स तो सर्टनली जंग के दौरान उन्होंने कहा है ना कि जब पब्लिक ऑफिशियली प्रोक्लेम्ड इमरजेंसी है تو اس صورت میں وہ انٹیکٹ رہیں گے, اور پھر آپ جو ہے صرف جو ڈیروگیبل رائٹس ہیں ان سے آپ ڈیروگیٹ کر سکتے ہیں, باقی جو ہیں. سو فریڈم آف انفارمیشن, رائٹ ٹو ایکسپریشن, یہ ہے تو ڈیروگیبل رائٹ, آپ اس کو ڈیروگیٹ کر سکتے ہیں, بٹ اونلی ان officially proclaimed emergency or if something like war or public disorder or chaos, جو یہ چیزیں ہوں اور اس کو آپ واضح قانون کی شکل میں, ان کے لیے بھی آپ قانون کی شکل میں بتائیں گے کہ قانوناً ہم نے یہ اس وجہ سے یہاں پہ یہ پروہیبٹ کیا ہے. اور پھر اس کے لیے آپ رائٹ ٹو انفارمیشن بھی دیکھ سکتے ہیں, اور پھر ہمارا جو کانسٹیٹیوشن کا ہے آرٹیکل, وہ میں بتانا بھول گیا, وہ بھی 19 ہی ہے. اس وجہ سے آپ کو یہ تو یاد ہو جائے گا ساری چیزیں, کیونکہ ساری 19 ہیں. UDHR میں بھی 19 ہے, ICCPR میں بھی 19 ہے, اور ہمارے کانسٹیٹیوشن میں بھی آئی تھنک 19 ہی ہے. تو اس میں اگر آپ دیکھیں گے تو اس میں اگین کچھ سانس لینے کی گنجائش ہے کہ آپ فریڈم آف ایکسپریشن تو ہے, لیکن یہ نہیں, یہ نہیں, یہ نہیں, یہ نہیں, یہ نہیں, یہ نہیں, وہ سارے آپ پڑھیں گے تو پھر آپ بھول جائیں گے آپ نے کہنا کیا تھا. یس عبد الرحیم, ایک کوشچن لے لیتے ہیں.
ہمارے پاس جو مطلب توہین رسالت کا قانون ہے وہ انٹرنیشنلی بہت زیادہ کرٹیسائز کیا جاتا ہے کہ فریڈم آف ایکسپریشن کو ڈیروگیٹ کرتی ہے. تو اس کے اوپر ہمارے پاس کیا پراپر ڈیفینس ہے, یا پھر ہم اس کو پازیٹیو لا میں ہی سمجھیں گے, مطلب مورلس کی کوئی ویلیو نہیں ہے اور لا کے اندر مطلب ریلیجن کی بھی کوئی ویلیو نہیں ہے, تو اس طرح کے لاز ہونے ہی نہیں چاہیے. اس کے اوپر کیا ڈیفینس ہوگا؟
سب سے پہلے تو میں نے یہ آرٹیکل 20 آپ کے سامنے رکھا کہ آرٹیکل 20 بڑا کلیئرلی بتا رہا ہے کہ اینی ایکسپریشن which results into religious hatred shall be prohibited by law, right? So this is an obligation. So یہ کوئی بھی ایسی چیز جو آپ ایسا ایکسپریشن جو ریلیجیس ہیٹریڈ پہ یا وائلنس پہ, دو نتیجے یعنی جو لازمی نکلتے ہیں پاکستان میں اس کے, ایک تو مذہبی منافرت پھیلتی ہے اور دوسرا وائلنس پھیلتا ہے. وائلنس تو آپ نے دیکھ لیا سیال کورٹ میں. تو اب یہ چیزیں اس کو کنٹرول کرنے کے لیے اسٹیٹ از انڈر این obligation to make a law, right? shall be prohibited by law کا مطلب یہی ہے نا کہ blasphemous content which is a hate speech, it shall be prohibited by law. So ہم نے تو اس کی compliance کی ہے, ٹھیک ہے. تو میں وہی کہتا ہوں کہ جو فریڈم آف ایکسپریشن کی بات کرتے ہیں وہ آرٹیکل 19 پڑھتے ہیں, 20 بھول جاتے ہیں. تو 20 میں ہیٹ اسپیچ کو پروہیبٹ کیا گیا ہے, اور اس میں اسٹیٹس کو ذمہ دار کہا گیا ہے, obligation کریٹ کی گئی ہے کہ آپ نے اس کو منع کرنا ہے. زیادہ سے زیادہ اس پہ آپ بات کر سکتے ہیں کہ جی اس کی سزا یہ ہے یا وہ ہے, یا اس میں کوئی فردر کوئی ایشو, لیکن سبسٹینشلی اس لا کو دیٹ از ریئلی ناٹ اونلی کمپلائنگ ود دا ریکوائرمنٹ, رادر اٹ از فلفلنگ دا اوبلیگیشن. اگر ہم نہ بناتے تو پھر ہم کہہ سکتے تھے کہ ہم تو آرٹیکل 20 کی ریکوائرمنٹ فلفل نہیں کریں. لیکن جن لوگوں کا مذہب میں اور خاص مذہب کے ساتھ بغض ہے تو انہوں نے تو اس کو اسی طرح ٹوسٹ کرنا ہے آرگومنٹ کو, رائٹ. سو بیسیکلی ہمیں یہ بھی ذہن میں رکھنا چاہیے نا کہ لوگوں کو اپنے مذاہب کے حوالے سے ان کی جو اپروچز ہیں وہ جب کسی ایسی پوزیشن میں آتے ہیں, انفلوئنشل پوزیشن میں ہوتے ہیں, تو وہ پھر ان کو ان چیزوں کو مس یوز کرنا شروع کر دیتے ہیں. تو یہ اگر کسی کا اسلام کے ساتھ باعث ہے تو اس کا تو ہمارے پاس جواب نہیں ہے, اس کا تو علاج ہمارے پاس نہیں ہے. لیکن جو کنونشن نے, کووننٹ نے جو ذمہ داری رکھی ہے اس کے اندر ہے کہ یہ قانون ہے, ٹھیک ہے. اس کی سبسٹنس پہ بات نہیں کی جا سکتی. فارم پہ کسی نے اگر بات کرنی ہے کہ اس میں فار ایگزامپل ایویڈنس کلیکشن کا کیا طریقہ کار ہے, اس میں پنشمنٹ کا کیا طریقہ کار ہے, رائٹ ٹو اپیل ہے یا نہیں ہے, وہ بات ہو سکتی ہے. بٹ ان سبسٹنس اٹ از ناٹ اونلی, I won't say that it is compatible. I would say that it is fulfilling the requirement of Article 20. In my personal opinion, you may disagree. ٹھیک ہے جی. I think with this conclude. Thank you very much.